All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another one. I'm pretty excited about this one. I'm excited about all of them. I mean, what am I talking about?
Yeah, but I'm really excited about this one. You talking about having a guest on here that has a story or six?
Or 600.
This man is from way back before he was born. He's got a story that we'll get into that in a minute, but I'm excited.
You like it when people brag on you like that?
And bragging. It's not bragging when it's the truth. I mean, no.
No. Go ahead and introduce yourself to me, my friend.
I'm Blake Shelby, and I guess I've known Richard and Mike. I've known Richard for...
You were in college.
Yeah, or high school. Yeah, high school or college.
You may have been upper class in high school.
It was a long time. He probably set one of my first bows up for me back in the day. Yeah, we go way back, and I've worked in the hunting industry for 30-something years now. So, but Monroe's my home, and it's where I've lived the majority of that time, and you know, I've been blessed to have a pretty mediocre career in the outdoor industry, and it's paid all my bills all this year. So
it's funny. Right out of college, it was the outdoor industry, wasn't it?
That's right. I'll tell that story real quick. It was funny because a lot of people ask me, "How'd you get started?" And my first job was with Mossy Oak, and I was their first marketing guy. They only had like 6 or 7 employees, so it was small. But I'd been editing a little magazine while I was in journalism school called Southern Whitetail Journal. I don't know if y'all remember that. Pat Mabry and some of those guys tried to get this magazine started.
How about that? No, did not know
so
that.
I'd met Cuz, and I was doing some turkey calling stuff and contests and stuff. And, man, I just decided I wanted to work at Mossy Oak. And so I got married, and about 3 weeks later, I just graduated from college at ULM, and I said, I'm going to West Point tomorrow. And I drove 4.5 hours to West Point, Mississippi, walked in the door and said, I want to speak to Toxie Hayes. And they were like, well, do you have an appointment? I said, no, but I drove a long way to get here. And they said, well, come on back. And I was like, you need to hire me to be your marketing guy. And I made a pitch. They hired me, and I'll never forget, my wife was a pharmacist, and she was making about $50,000. And I called her from the telephone, and I was like, baby, we're moving to West Point, Mississippi. I got a job making $17,000 a year, so quit yours, and I'm going to West Point.
She was proud of you.
She never hesitated. She came, and we moved to West Point, and I worked there for several years, 5-6 years, and then Remington hired me from there, and I ran their marketing for Remington and Strand Fishing Line, which was the same company. And then from there, I did a brief 4 or 5 years as the publisher at the Peterson's Outdoor Group, which I ran. I was the group publisher for Peterson's Hunting, Bow Hunter, Game and Fish, Guns and Ammo, all those magazines. But I still loved the marketing side. So that's when PSC was really getting their tails kicked by Matthews on the marketing side for the first time. And Pete Shepley called me, and I went over there to do marketing. I ended up being the executive vice president and was there for 15 and a half years.
And it grew.
Yeah, we grew a lot during those times. We hired the juries during those times, and I got to experience a lot, do a lot of outdoor television. My first show to be a part of was Mossy Oak's Hunting the Country, and then that went on. That back during the TNN days, and that grew. And then I went to Remington, and I hired Cuz to produce Remington Country, and then at PSE. Then it was the Outdoor Channel and the Sportsman Channel and all that.
That's
and
right.
We hired the juries to come in and start doing Bow Madness, and I was judge on Dream Season and all that stuff. But I've been very blessed. But I'll tell you a little myth about the outdoor industry. About the television industry. you couldn't buy a cup of coffee with the amount of money I made on TV.
Oh.
They don't pay. They don't pay anything, but I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
But look, so, even before that, let's go back a little bit further. Your dad was, he was great, really. And tell him the background. This is really your background.
Yeah,
really, is
it
where
really
you
is.
got your.
Yeah, my dad was a legend in the fishing industry, and that's really how I knew that you could make a living doing it, because. And he always told me, get your degree in what you want to work in and make yourself valuable. But he started out with Bagley Bait Company way back in the day. He had been working in the outdoor industry. He was an artist, and he drew Harry and Charlie for Bassmaster Magazine, which was the longest running comic strip. It was an article, and it ran for almost 50 years. I mean, nonstop.
Now, Nolan, are you old enough to remember? All right, Bassmaster Magazine. When you would read through it, some of us would immediately forego the first 7/8 of the magazine to get back to the back to read Harry and Charlie to see what those two guys. But the two, Harry and Charlie, was your daddy and.
Yeah, and Don Worth, and that's an interesting story because. They were nobodies. Now, Don Worth went on to be the editor of Field and Stream and all this glorious stuff, and a real well-known outdoor writer. But when they met because they were both in advertising for Monroe Building and Loan at a little ad agency there. And he was a Yankee, and my dad was just a redneck. So they went fishing after work, and they had this old John boat, my dad did, that they called the old stump jumper. And they went out and they went fishing, and Don wrote a story making fun of my dad, basically, and Southern people and how they fish, and poking fun at himself too. And my dad illustrated it, and they sent it in for the first ever issue of Bassmaster Magazine. They heard about it, and it was selected, and they ended
jumper.
up doing.
That was even on Harry and Charlie. That's the name of their boat.
And one of them was a little skinny guy like Don Worth, and then that was Harry, and then Charlie was the bigger guy, and like my dad. But they had been in, so they had kind of gotten exposed to the industry, and then my dad went to work for Bagley Bait Company, and then from there he went over to Ranger Boats, and he was the VP of marketing for Ranger for I don't know 25 years, a long time.
That company did okay.
Yeah, they did pretty good. Yeah. And I knew that you could make a living in the industry. And it's funny, I now love to bass fish. And I grew up bass fishing and was lucky that, I had Hank Parker and Bill Dance coming to my house to stay, but when I started, I was so eaten up with hunting, I said, I had a lot of opportunities and I wanted out of my dad's shadow a little bit. I think all young guys want to do that, and loved him, but I wanted to kind of do my own thing. And so I said, I'm going to make it in the hunting industry. I'm going to do what he did, but I'm going to do it in the hunting industry. And it's funny because as I became better known in the hunting industry, I loved to bass fish because I could go to a bass tournament and, not have to, nobody would know me, nobody would talk to me, which is kind of nice
then,
sometimes.
The fishing was... It was big back then, and money was, Bagley would show up in his helicopter and land at an event. I mean, your daddy was in the heyday, so it's not that there's not money in fishing now, but it's not like it was back then.
Yeah, it was a
Wild
different
West
deal back then. Yeah, and it was a lot of. It was before conglomerates came along and bought up everything. All those were independent companies.
Charles Spence was. I was trying to think of his name a while ago, but he was really when he really got started.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was less corporate then, and man, it was a lot of pioneers, and one thing that I've loved about being, I got to see that on the hunting side. When I first got in. People, it's funny, people always want to ask you, would you know so-and-so? I'm like, of course I know them, because the group of people that are going to these shows every weekend and going to all these events, it's one hotel, you know, that everybody's staying at. So if they're a celebrity going to these things, well, you're going back and eating with the same guys every night, you know. And so, yeah, you get to know all of them really well. And I was able to be there kind of in the beginning of the hunting television thing and saw, you know, with the juries and Michael Waddell and David Blanton and all those guys. And like two of those I mentioned were competitors of ours. They, you know, but we were still close friends. David Blanton and I and Waddell, and we were still good friends because we hung out and we were helping each other unload trucks and
you know, competitive, but y'all were, you know, was friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought the world of them, you know, and still do.
And good people. But you know, but fast forward. So when your daddy was in the fishing, it was this big. So, but when you really got started in Mossy Oak, it was hunting in the South is really big, but the business part of it wasn't not so much.
That's right. I remember we went from, I believe the first year I was there, we did 3 or 4 million in licensing sales. 4 years later, we were doing 350 million in licensing sales. I remember the biggest thing that I give Toxie credit for. Toxie's a really smart guy, and he and his dad Fox was a brilliant businessman behind the whole thing too. But one thing that I give him credit for was keeping up with that growth, because back then they owned the apparel company, so they literally when you're getting 300-400% increases every year, just making inventory, you're taking every nickel not only that you made that you can scrounge up to try to buy more inventory to fill orders for the next year. And when you work in a business like the outdoor industry, one of the things people don't realize about it is it's a real strange business because you get all your sales in about a 2-month period. Y'all know, you know, you got to survive that whole year of building everything and getting to everything stocked up and ready so that you can have a real short window, and you're really betting on it that it's going to go well. And it makes being in business, and especially a growing business, that much harder.
You either deep pockets or a good bank president.
And that's where Fox Hayes came in for Toxie so well. Fox Hayes was a Southern gentleman that's Toxie's daddy, and he ran Bryan Foods, and people don't realize that out of West Point, Mississippi. For years, he bought every pig and every cow that came in through there, and usually out of a cash drawer. And you're talking about 7,000 a day, and so he was extremely well respected. So one thing Toxie had going for him, I don't think I'm telling any secrets. Mr. Fox called you anybody. It got their attention. He's one of those guys that is, I think, the world of him. And
well, you know, at Mossy Oak, it's kind of run from where, you know, in the South it was big, and then maybe, I don't know that Realtree really ever took over it, but maybe it kind of
leveled out.
And then now it's hit another.
Yeah,
it may be as popular now as it was, you know, back in the day.
Yeah, I think so. It's that's a good business to be in, and unfortunately, it's something that everybody thinks they can be in, and everybody's kind of tried to do their own camo patterns and everything like that, and basically they're a marketing company. I mean, and that's the brilliance that I was able to be a part of and learn from, you know, is that it was a marketing-driven company. We weren't really selling a product. We sold some clothes, but you were selling to licensing, and you had to have the brand presence. And Toxie let me do some really off-the-wall things in the beginning, and we did some really cool ads, and it was very creative, and that really helped me kind of make a name for myself too. Like, I'll never forget coming in, and the first time I told Toxie, we're not going to put a camo guy in the ad. It's not going to be a guy well, what do you mean? We're the most effective camo pattern. You have to have a picture of a guy you can't see. I'm like, no. And we did the eye ad. Do you remember the ads that had a picture of a turkey eye and a duck eye and a deer eye and all these different game animals around the page. And it said the most discriminating eyes and something about the most discriminating eyes are not, and who you're really trying to fool. But it was kind of revolutionary because it didn't have another effectiveness shot is what we called it. And it really blew up. And then we got more into the lifestyle part of it. And we realized pretty early on if you could sell that lifestyle, that's what people were really buying.
Is that the casual stuff?
Well, not only the casual stuff, but you just wanted to be, they could buy cheaper camo that would work. I mean, they really could. To get a guy to go buy $45 shirt and a $40 pair of pants, they had to be buying into the whole concept, the way it made them feel. It was a big lifestyle decision. And now, there's people that do it with Sitka or whatever the different brands are, but that's really what they're buying. They're not just buying the functionality of the clothes. And we sold that obsession, and I'll never forget the first ads we did on it. It was another one of those, and we did an ad that said, hun, hun, hun. It was just type, and it said, hun, 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 work, hun, 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 work, hun, hun, hun. And it was about that. This is what I think about most of the time, and every once in a while I have to go to work. And we did another one that was, we called the ink blot ads that were on the ROARC test or whatever that mental test is, where you look at the ink blots and what do you see? And we bought a series of quarter-page ads, and it was great because they were black and white, so they were cheap. They weren't like a full-color ad. And one of them was an ink blob, but if you looked at it, it was a duck landing. The next one was a turkey strutting, but it looked and it said, if you see anything other than a blob of ink, you may have a problem. Fortunately, we can relate. Call Mossy Oak for more information. And that was really what we were selling, instead of just selling the next camo pattern. And it really changed the industry. And, I remember Lock-On did it when you remember the dinosaur ads that Lock-On had, tree stands had back in the day. And there was some really creative stuff going on back then.
Yeah. Now fast forward. So, Mossy Oak, then after that, the Remington.
Right.
And then, because I can't wait to get the further down the road. But So Remington, tell us. So Remington. So you taxi. I think I'm gonna try this Remington.
Yeah, and it was I loved it. It was a great brand. I felt honored to be a part of it, but it was very corporate. And so that part, and I moved my family to North Carolina, which I wasn't crazy about. I wanted to get home. And, I was working for a big investment holding firm, and I didn't like that. And they were basically raping the company. That was the beginning of the end for Remington, is they started just raping the company, taking the profits and trying to make it look good. And so we were in NASCAR and doing all this stuff that I couldn't relate to. And I knew the guy that brought me in because I was an industry guy. And then they're trying to plug me into being a corporate guy, and it didn't really work out that well. I mean, I was fine there, and I enjoyed it. It was a good learning experience, but I was still young. I was 27, and I was the only director there that was under 60. It was all older guys. Matter of fact, it's funny. I would never forget the first meeting I go into. We're all sitting around a conference room, and they start asking me questions, and I was saying yes sir and no sir to these guys. And my mentor pulled me out, and he's like, wait, I respect the way you're raised, but you can't be saying you're on the same level as them. You can't be telling them yes sir and no sir. And I couldn't make myself stop. They were older than me. That's just what you do. But
in the South, that's what we do.
Yeah, that's what you do. But he was like, you're going to have to go toe-to-toe with those guys. And I'm like, well, we'll see. But I stayed there a few years and enjoyed it, and then tried the publishing thing, and that was very successful. And the main reason I moved into that was because it let me move home. And that was my goal, is to move back here. I wanted to send my kids to OCS. I wanted to be next to my parents for, the rest of their life, and I wanted my kids to have that grandparent influence on them. And so, North Carolina was the most beautiful place in the world you could live, but it wasn't home, and I missed it. And so my goal was to get back here, and I did, and I never left again. And that's always been the stipulation. So,
Well,
yeah.
bam. Fast forward. Now then. So how did it happen with this next phone call? How did that go?
With PSC, Pete called me out of the blue and just said, and he had been asking around, and I knew Pete, but because like I say, it's a small industry.
Well, and he was such a at this time,
he was an icon.
Pete Shepley's the man.
Oh yeah, he's an icon, and hard headed. Good grief, he was hard headed. But I had a ton of respect for him, and he just called me up and he brought me in to do some consulting with him, and he's like, we can't compete with what Matthews is doing. We can engineer bows. I'll just say this. It wasn't that they were out engineering anybody. They were out marketing everybody.
Absolutely.
And they went out and they were brilliant timing. They went out and got every TV show because they saw that TV was the next big thing. While everybody else was spending their money on target archery or whatever, they went out and got a heck of a target team too. But they started spending, I've heard anywhere from 80 cents on the dollar. They were spending a lot of money on marketing. And Pete's philosophy was totally different. Pete was an engineer. And if you looked at us, we had 10, 12 degreed engineers from Brown, UCLA, MIT. And and that's what he valued. But what he had to understand was, doesn't matter what you're building, it's a matter what you're selling. If you're not reaching that customer and appealing to him, and Matthews killed the whole industry, absolutely dominated the whole industry. And he brought me in to say, how can we fix this? And I was like, you got to change. And we started down that road, and it worked for a good while.
All right. Now, the first, when you're there, in my mind, I know what I remember the first hire that you did with some public who was it? Who was
the Drury's?
That was the first. Okay.
Yeah, and I had to bring guys in that I had pull with, and I'll tell you how far Mark Drury and I go back. Mark Drury worked in customer service at Mossy Oak, and then he was a salesman at Mossy Oak, and he was still winning. He was just starting to win world championships and all the turkey calling stuff. And I remember when Mark started Mad Calls, I helped him with the packaging because I was a graphics guy that he knew. And matter of fact, I've got a box call over there that was in the first 10 that he made, and he signed it to me. But we were really good friends, and he's like a brother. And so when I went to work at PSC, I called him. I was like, look, dude, you got to come. And he was like, they were with Hoyt for years. And Hoyt had been really good to him. And he was like, man, I can't leave. I'm like, you ain't got a choice. I ain't asking you. I'm telling you, you're going to do it. And it was funny. We had just introduced the X-Force. And I was like, Mark only draws like 58 pounds, something like 57 and a half pounds. He's weak. And Mark, he says it's a bad shoulder. He's just weak. But yeah, and I was like, dude, I can get you shooting, or you're hunting set up well over 300 feet per second. He's like, there's no way. Like, I'm flying you to Tucson, and we flew him and Tracy, his wife, and Terry and Willa. Terry's Mark's brother, and Willa's his wife, and we flew them out and put them up at Pete's house, and Pete's wife cooked for them, and we set up bows, and we talked archery for 3 days, and they got the vision, and I had him shooting like 306 and with that X-Force, because it was a game changer. I mean, the technology was a game changer. So,
and that's the first bow that went below 6.5 inches on the brace height.
Consistently, first mainstream bow. There had been some off-liers probably that had a short brace height, but what the real genius behind it was the limb geometry. We knew for years that if we could make that limb hold up, it would do great things. And But what happens when you get a bow limb, you have to shape that fiberglass. And you got to realize fiberglass runs one direction. So you've got all these strands of fiberglass. And it's gone, when they first started shaping them, thinning out the limbs, they would do it on a bandsaw and sanders. And it leaves a lot of hanging fiberglass that are basically useless strands. And then we upgraded to water jet. They started cutting the limbs with water using high pressure water, and that made them a lot stronger. And then PSE, and I don't think we came up with I won't say how we were doing it. I think everybody knows now, but we came up with a new way of shaping that limb, and it made it even stronger so that you weren't losing all that strength. So then we could build that limb up and store that energy, and it performed. It was
and it stayed together.
Yeah, it stayed together great. And I'll tell people this all the time. It was the biggest leap in speed that the archery industry's ever seen. I went back and looked, and when they went from recurves to the first compound, they were only picking up like 20, 25 feet per second. This was a 50 foot per second, 45 to 50 foot per second jump. And it wasn't just the limbs, it was really the whole system. But by being able to overload and preload those limbs, we had learned a lot from parallel limbs. Now you were basically getting advantage of parallel limbs, but you were bending them and holding more of that preload for longer. And it had a lot of challenges too. You couldn't run it through a tradition, as y'all know. You couldn't put in a regular bow press, so we had to get new bow presses, new fixtures for bow presses, and luckily
that was the challenge.
That was a huge challenge. Luckily, Last Chance came along at the same time. If you were still having to put them in Apple bow presses, it would have killed the whole thing because it would just shear off the limbs.
But that was Pete's vision. PSE made great shooting bows.
Oh yeah,
great shooting bows. Pete Shepley, he wanted the fastest.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That was his. He was going to hang his hat on the fact that and I think that bow was the X-Force.
That's right. Yeah, it was the original X-Force. Yeah, and they had a Dream
the
Season
Evo?
version.
No. Evo came way after.
Yeah, way after.
This was a.
The original X-Force was the name of it, and then they came out with the Dream Season X-Force, and then we later added, the Omen, which was a real short axle brace height, and
There was still another one.
the Mach series.
No,
That goes back to your day.
come on. What's the one? Now the Mach series. Of course, back in our day, way before you in PSC, they had the Infinity series,
Yeah.
machined aluminum riser instead of the cast,
Right.
and then they come out with a Mach 6. Who in the world was going to spend $1,000 for a Mach 6 or for a compound bow?
Yeah.
Bow only.
Yeah.
And you might have got a little short overdraw or something
Yeah.
only back in those days. And now look where the bow really, and that was back that was late. No, that was early 90s.
Early 90s, yeah.
And then in that early 90s, that Mach 6 was $1,000. Well, now here we are with a high-end aluminum bow is $1,200-1,300.
Right.
So people say, man, these bows have gotten so far. And I guess they have because now there's more of them. But price really hadn't changed from that Mach 6 to...
No, they really hadn't. And I'll tell you this, and back to Pete, that was Pete's blessing and his curse. Pete's a legit engineer. He's not he wasn't, most guys were inventing stuff in the garage, playing around with cam designs, getting a foot 2 per second out of them, introducing them, but they weren't legit engineers. Pete ran the missile defense program at Magnavox, which developed the Stinger missile. And he was, he has an engineer, he's a master's degree in engineering, and he's a legit engineer. So he was able to do some things, he made innovations people just take for granted, like a center shot riser, People are like, well, hadn't risers always been center shot? No, they used to stick off to the side. And there's so many 80-something patents, that have changed.
What about the plastic vein?
Oh yeah, that's one.
A lot of people don't even know that.
I didn't know that was him.
He is the man.
He's
with
the guy that
plastic
invented
vein.
it. Yeah, and adjustable draw links and all this stuff, and
it's a list this long.
Yeah, it's a lot, and so, but that was his deal, was build a better mousetrap, and then I had to come along and say, you better market that mousetrap, because if you don't, and that's where Matt McPherson changed the game. He's like, it's all about perception, It's if you're not selling it to them, and they did some things industry-wise that were a lot different too, in the way that they did, no real reps and all that stuff that really changed things too. But it was that's what he brought me in for, is to say, like Pete, if it was up to Pete, he was like the old Ford. They would all be black. They would be, it was all function, function. And I was like, no cosmetics on them whatsoever. And they were ugly. And I'd be like, Pete, you got to spend some money. If you want to get $1,000 for an aluminum bow, you better spend some time machining that sucker. Yeah. And let's make them look good, and let's have different color options. And I mean, he spray painted the camo on bows forever after dipping and everything. His were
the gray and black camo with the.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But all he wanted was something that would work good, because that's the way he thought. So my job was really to convince him that we needed to do some other things. We needed to, and we complimented each other really well doing that.
Well, I can remember, my stint with him for a little while. Nobody told Pete Shepley no.
Right.
And Pete Shepley for years didn't have a check. What nobody checked him. You checked him.
I checked him a lot. Yeah. And what people didn't realize is he respected that. I'd go toe to toe with him, and he would listen. Now we got heated. Don't get me wrong, but you'd get mad, and we'd have a knockdown drag out in the office, and then he'd come by. Well, you ready to go lunch? Yeah, let's go. And it was over. It was the way he respected that. He didn't. A lot of people power have that situation. I think Donald Trump's biggest problem too, even though I love and support Donald Trump, I'm like, he needs somebody in there that'll tell him when to shut up sometimes, and people of great power and influence often don't have that guy.
He doesn't have it now.
They need it. Yeah. Yeah. And
talking about Donald Trump or Pete Shipley?
No. I think Mr. Pete probably has calmed down somewhat.
He's chilled out a little bit and he's not that involved anymore. He's kind of out of the deal. I mean, nobody has done more. No, he really has. He's done a lot. And I've just been blessed. The thing that it's funny, like if you look on that wall, I've got all these animals in here that I've been able to kill. More people will go look at those pictures than they will the trophies. And I like talking about the pictures more than the trophies, because I've gotten blessed to get to hunt with Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Foxworthy and baseball players and guys from the fishing industry. Kevin Van Dam I got to be really good friends with, because he and Greg Hackney and all those guys, they love, now that they make their living fishing, all they want to talk about is hunting. I used to have a deal with them. Okay, I'll answer your questions for 30 minutes, but then you got to give me some fishing tips, and we'll talk archery and bows, but and I've gotten to, get those guys like the Drurys and guys that are, it's a great industry.
But those Drury boys, we got all, but they turn that with their shows. It's more than one. They have a Dream Season this and the Drury's that, and then
tons of them. Yeah.
What's the one? And I really used to watch it a lot, but they have their steps.
The seasons of the different degrees of the rut and stuff.
Yeah, but
and
what was it called?
I forget.
Well, it's just
now.
Drury Outdoors.
13.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, 13. 13 was a really innovative show.
Dude, it was awesome. And look, and these boys, they had a scientific way that they, and probably still do.
They still do. And Mark Drury is a killer, son. I mean, there's guys in this industry that are, and there's guys that aren't, and there's famous people that aren't, and that, that couldn't go hang their own deer stand. There's some of those. If you put one turkey in the Mojave Desert and you needed him killed, I'm calling Mark Drury, because he's going to kill that sucker. Yeah, he's going to find a way. He's and he knows more about whitetail deer than anybody, including the doctors that I know. I mean, he just is obsessed with it. I've known Dr. Jacobson and Dr. Kroll and those guys that are brilliant, but Mark Drury has the experience, and he is a stone cold killer. He will hold it together, and one place you can really tell is when you're watching the footage of these guys hunting, not the edited version. And man, I would be like with Mark, I'd be like, dude, when are you gonna shoot? He would wait forever, because until it got perfect, he was holding it together. He wasn't gonna rush anything, and he's just like that. He's calm, cool, and collected through and a smart guy, and that was another thing that I learned. It was funny, because when I went to Remington, I remember going there, and I was a little intimidated, because these guys were it was a DuPont company before I got there, and it was all a bunch of former DuPont guys, and they all wore their class rings from schools I didn't even know existed, and this business school and that business school, and they're dressed all night. And I've been working with Bob Dixon and Cuz and Toxie, and I'm in there, good grief, I'm out of place. And
more camo every day.
Yeah, and I learned real quick, the smartest guys I'd ever worked with were Bob Dixon and Cuz Strickland.
Now, he was a good dude, but
oh yeah,
Bob
he was
Dixon.
a great guy. And those guys, they might be rednecks, but business-wise, they were brilliant. And work ethic, they were those guys.
Well, they were good old boys, but they were kind of on the beginning of something, and they wasn't letting it go. I mean, they were in the beginning.
Oh yeah. And you didn't come in easy either. They made it hard on you. I'll never forget the first time I walked in there, and we were going to the SHOT Show in Vegas, and they looked at me and they said, "When are you leaving?" I'm like, "I don't know. How early do I need to get there? I'll book my flight." So like, "No, you're driving you're driving to Vegas from West Point, Mississippi, in a U-Haul."
With the stuff,
hauling everything.
You're driving the truck. Go rent you a U-Haul. And it's 38 hours in a U-Haul governed to 45 miles an hour. You're driving it there and back.
it had the booth.
Yeah,
Did
it
you
had the
have
whole
booths
booth
back
in
then?
it.
Okay.
Yeah, it had the whole booth in it. And we built the booth in the warehouse out of wood, and we loaded up everything, and off I went. Me and another guy that worked in the warehouse, and we would change out and sleep, and the other one, and it was an initiation. I remember Cuz telling me, we all did it. You're going to do it.
You look at it and say, man, this outdoor industry, boy, this is where it's at. Now,
Yeah, this is glamorous. Yeah.
Some coffee.
$17,000 a year, it was worth it.
Yeah,
wasn't
no
it?
doubt. Yeah, I was a high dollar employee, man. I was way up there. So,
What about Earnhardt? Now how fun was that?
man, that was
He
so
loved it, didn't he?
interesting. Yeah, he loved it, and I got to be really good friends with him, because one thing about Dale, he could differentiate between authentic and not authentic. His meter was dead nuts on, and he didn't play. That intimidator thing was not an act. And if you went in there and you were easily intimidated around him, you weren't going to make it. Now, I didn't care. I was like, I'll go, and I'd give him a hard time. I'd pick on him, and he respected that. He's kind of like Pete. He respected it if you went back at him, and we would go, and I'll tell you about the time we were filming. I'll get into a story here. We were filming a commercial. That gun in that shadow box up there is a 5.97-22 that he signed to me, and there's a picture up there of me and him shooting skeet. But we were going to that shoot, and it was on an airport in the middle of nowhere, grass airport, private airstrip is where we went to shoot this commercial. And I remember it was kind of cold, and I forget what Dale needed, but I was driving, and I was like, well, Dale, we'll just stop in Walmart and get it. He looked at me, he's like, son, I can't go to Walmart in North Carolina. He said, we'll have to call security to get me out of there. And I'm like, okay, you sit in the car. He's like, I can't even sit in the car. If somebody walks by and sees me, it's over. And I was like, okay. So I called somebody else to get whatever he needed. And we go out there and we started shooting, and I would get a shooting instructor out there. He would be a safety guy for the shoot, but then they'd have skeet and trap out there, and you could shoot in between takes when it was, and just have a good time. Well, Dale never really shot shotguns much, and I was waxing his butt, and he's like, all right, Shelby, get out of here. And I'd go back to work, and he gets that instructor over there, and they started working. And an hour later, he called me over there and smoked me. I mean, the hand-eye coordination was there. He needed a little bit of instruction, and but he was a fun guy. He loved to cut up, and he was another one of those that was not highly educated. He had a 6th grade education that used to embarrass him a lot. But I was like, Dale, I think it worked out.
That's right.
I think you've done okay. But anyway, the point of the story I was going to tell, we start out to this airstrip, and I'd rented 2 Ford Tauruses for our driver, who was Rick Mast, who ran the Remington race team, and then me and Dale were in the car behind, and Dale's driving. Because you got to let Dale Earnhardt drive. And we're going down, it's tobacco fields everywhere in North Carolina. We're going down there, and all of a sudden, Dale bumps Rick, and it turned into a dirt track race. They destroyed these 2 cars, spinning each other out, cutting through the tobacco fields, totaled them. They're totally wrecked. And I'm like, Tommy Milner was the president of the company, and I got to come back, and at first I was scared to death during the whole ordeal. And I was like, because it went on for like 20, 30 minutes. Till one car was incapacitated. And then I was like, Shelby, you're getting to ride with Dale Earnhardt. Right. This is just enjoy it. If you die, this is the way to go. And I was like, and it was over, and I called Tommy Milner, and I was like, Tommy, I got bad news. I said, we rented a couple of rental cars, and Rick and Dale were driving. He goes, no, you didn't. And I was like, yeah. Did you get insurance on him? I said, yeah, I got full coverage on him. He said, then good, we're good. And that was it. That was the only.
I sort of like the show Tom Cruise. He and the boy racing.
Days of Thunder.
Days of Thunder. That's probably where they got it from.
Every time that would break out among those race car drivers. Have you ever been around bull riders? Bull riders are crazy. Yeah. NASCAR drivers are worse.
Same.
Really. They're every bit that bad.
So you have to be, I guess, to have that mindset to do what they do.
You've got to be able to. It's another level. And I could tell you stories. Hank Parker and Dale Earnhardt were best friends, very best friends. And man, the stories that they would swap that they couldn't tell publicly about their times together, and it was. I could sit around and listen to those guys. So but
Hank seems like calm.
Oh, he is.
And then you have Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah. But they're both hunting nuts.
That's right.
I'll tell you about Hank Parker. I go to Hank Parker's house, and Hank Parker I knew from the time I was 4, with my dad. I mean, he was literally like an uncle to me. So we would go and we were filming, and he's another guy I brought into PSE that nobody thought would ever leave Matthews, and I convinced him to come over, and we go and we're filming. We go to his house, and we're going to film some cutaways for a TV show, whatever it was, and I go to his office, which is just this giant room and a little desk here in the corner, and you would think there would be fishing memorabilia everywhere. There wasn't. There were deer heads everywhere. That's all that there was. And there was a Bassmasters Classic trophy, and there was one Angler of the Year from different series. There's only like 4 trophies out there. And I'm looking at this Bassmaster Angler of the Year trophy, and he's like, well, pick it up, Shelby. Let me get your picture with it. I'm like, I can't touch that thing. You know, that's a one-of-a-kind trophy. So finally I pick it up and I hold it up. And I was like, well, Hank, where are the rest of them? You know, I mean, he won, I forgot how many Bassmaster Classics, but he was 7 straight Angler of the Year titles. And he goes and opens this closet up, and it's about 30 feet long, 15 feet wide, and literally stacked to the ceiling with trophies. And it's Angler of the Year, Mega Bass, just all these trophies that, and he didn't care anything about them. He was like,
Let me show you this deer right here.
That's all he wanted to talk about ever. And now he was fun to fish with. He was a lot of fun to fish with. He came here and we fished quite a bit. We filmed several shows around this area, and he used to come in and he would be the MC for that big tournament they had charity tournament they'd have over at Honey Break, and he'd come in a week early and he and I would go film shows. But yeah,
I forgot about y'all's relationship with those guys over at Honey Break.
We did. They were, and he had that lease for a while. He killed some monsters over there.
Well, his boys, one or both had killed great deer over there.
Oh yeah, they have. And see, Catfish and that's his younger son. Well, he's got Hank Jr. and then he's got the 2 sons that were twins, and Catfish is the one that was in the industry. And man, we were always getting in trouble, and he was always ticked off at us. And another one, he gets us, and we go on a hunt in Florida. We're going on a turkey/alligator. Well, we're going on a turkey hunt, but they had alligators, and both wanted to kill alligators with a bow. So I was like, okay, we're going to go shoot an alligator with a bow. And we didn't want to do it on a line or anything like that. Yeah. And you had to shoot them during the daylight. So I get this. My daughter was with me. She killed a big one. And then we get this big alligator out there, and we stalk down on him. He's in kind of a farm pond deal. And we stalk down on him, and I put a pretty good shot on it, but it's hard to kill an alligator. And it circles around and it goes out there. And they're like, well, we're going to grab a rod with a hook on it. And I'm like, no, we're not. I'm going to stalk out there and shoot this sucker again. So I stalk out there to it, and it's a 12-plus footer. It's a monster. And I start shooting it, and I just pumping arrows through this thing. And the first time it throws a big wake up and almost gets me, because I'm 3 yards from it.
Oh my!
Boom,
You're not in water?
Yeah, I'm in water up to about my thighs. And
I thought you're on the.
No, you can't run
on
good.
the bank over there.
You can't run good like
He's
that.
a lot faster than you.
But the one thing about alligators, you need to stay out of a straight line. If you're in the peripheral vision, they won't really turn on you to come get you, but you don't want to be in a straight line. And I'm pumping these arrows, and I ran out of arrows. And now my arrows are floating on the other side of the alligator. So I decided to reach around him to try to grab one more arrow. Bad mistake. And here he comes. And I know Jesus is the only one to walk on water, but I got close. I got real close. But I'll never forget, I get back and we're pumped because this is great footage. Great footage. And Hank calls me pissed off, ticked off, I'll say. He's mad. What in the world are you idiots doing? I'm like, what do you mean? That's great footage. He's like, I'm going to have to call your daddy and tell him I'm responsible for you on my TV show, and I can't show that. We'll have rednecks all over the country trying to stalk alligators. It never saw the light of day, and it was some of the coolest footage you've ever seen.
Well, you just have to do the little thing at the bottom.
Disclaimer.
Don't try this.
Don't
try this at
I
home.
wanted to show it, but he would not show it. And,
what are you doing?
But it was fun. Catfish was a NASCAR driver, the son, and he's a big time NASCAR driver, and he is crazy too.
I ate supper with him one day, Hank Parker. We were in Shreveport at Bass Pro doing a thing, and I'd forgot about this till just now, and he was talking about that he wanted to try his hand in NASCAR, and he says, one thing you got to have if you're going to be in NASCAR, and I want to say, he said, you got to have a car and you got to have $1 million. And I think that all right, so he made a lot of money fishing and that kind of thing, but he was kind of backed up by family.
Oh,
by
yeah.
his wife, you know,
Yeah.
And I don't
he
know
was.
that he cares about it. But I remember him saying that you got to have a car, you got to have $1 million, and he said we're gonna do it 1 year and see what happens. And I don't know that I think he just kind of.
They made it for a while, and he actually, that's an interesting story because his older son Hank Jr. was the driver that got the biggest deal, and
Maybe it was Hank Jr.'s the one that that started.
Hank Jr. got hired to replace Mark Martin as the Miller Lite car, and this is the way I understand the story. I could be wrong, but it was a done deal. They had a big contract signed. The whole deal had done all the media, and they were fixing to do an announcement. And he's a very good Christian man. And he got up there before the announcement was made, and he saw himself in one of those cardboard cutouts wearing that Miller Lite. He said, "I can't do it," and he walked away.
Holy
And he didn't want to promote the alcohol portion of it, and he never went back. That was it. It kind of, I think, it probably killed his career too. But he did the right thing for himself, and he had made it to the highest level. He was fixing to make a lot of money, and walked away from all of it. So,
well, look, let's all right. So let's fast forward. So now we're getting kind of to the end of the PSC stint, and I know that PSC was going in a different direction. I know Pete was kind of in a different frame of mind now, and he's got another vision, which agree or disagree, but it's his vision.
yeah.
So now we're worried about Blake Shelby.
That's right.
Good night. I said, the work that you had done, and I'm not saying single-handedly, but you know, you even had your hand in the engineering of the of a lot of the new bows and stuff. A lot of people don't know that. And then all of a sudden, Whitetail Properties.
That's right.
And how did that?
Well, it's funny. Dan Perez, who you know really well, started Whitetail Properties. He was a rep at PSC probably the time you were there.
Yes.
And he had a brilliant idea to start this real estate company that specialized in hunting property. Now we think of it as no big deal. Everybody does that. At the time, nobody had ever done it. You know, the only real estate guys were local residential guys. And he really took a marketing-heavy approach, and I thought he was crazy. I was like, but we knew each other from those days, and he had been trying to tell me for years, you need to go to work for me. You'll love it. You'll make more money. You'll do this. And I'm like, oh, it's just not who I am. And, man, I wish I'd have listened to him 10 years before I did, because it's been the best experience. And I was at a point in my career where I was over it. I was tired of, you got to realize for 20 years, I flew every week. I was on an airplane either going to Tucson from here or going to, before that I was working out of L.A. with the publishing company. And then I would go, I had 400 plus employees in Tucson that were indirect reports, either direct or indirect reports. So I would go out there for a week, and then the off weeks I would go see Bass Pro or Cabela's, Dick's Academy, whoever it was, do all or go to a archery tournament, an ASA, whatever it was. But I was constantly on the road, and it just wore me out. And I would, I was about to turn 50, and I was like, I need to work for myself. And with Whitetail Properties, it's a unique deal because you own your territory. You run your own territory. And we don't put 15 guys in an office and let them battle it out. You own your territory, and you get a piece of everything that comes in or out of it, and you invest in it. You do your own marketing, you pay for all that, and you have to have a little money to get going. But I was at a point to where I could afford to do it, and man, it's been the best thing that ever happened to me. And
But you're still in the people helping business. I
That's
mean,
right.
you were before, and it's you help people every day.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love it because I've had that dream my whole life. And I love property. I love developing deer property and deer and turkeys and planting food plots and growing pine trees and hardwood, the whole deal. And my family's, we've owned about 1,800 acres across South Arkansas, and we've always kind of had a foot in that game. And I absolutely love that part of it. As I've gotten older, more than the killing part of it. I think we've all gone through that evolution, and to where now I'm like, I love growing big deer, but I just soon put my nephews on them as I would me go shoot them. Yeah. And I love I call it diesel therapy. Put me on a tractor and let me drive around in circles,
absolutely.
And it's funny, they got a new country song, something about that, and about tractor therapy, I think is what they called it. I've called it diesel therapy forever. But yeah, that's kind of my happy place. And to get to do that, and work for a company that's a good Christian-based company that makes no apologies for being, who they hire and why they hire them, and it's been just a huge blessing. And this is home. It's always been home for me. And so I've kind of gotten to use that influence that I had here and the people that I know and help like-minded people. And
well, you've kind of surrounded yourself too, and maybe they have been there too, but the guys that you work with in this region, I guess, they good outdoorsmen, good family people.
Oh, absolutely.
We know them, and
I'll say this too. There's no place like this area, no place in the world. I lived in Mississippi, which I loved. I lived in North Carolina. I've traveled and lived part-time in the West, and man, it's not home. These are the best people in the world and the best outdoorsmen in the world, period. And y'all see it. We've got the best. I mean, you guys, for instance, I've lived in places where, like in North Carolina, I lived in Greensboro, North Carolina. You would think there would be somebody in Greensboro, North Carolina that could work on a bow. There's not. If you want to get a bow worked on, you took it down to Sports Authority, and you had some high school kid, that had a week's training trying to do it. And people don't have any idea how blessed we are to have, the support structure that we have around here. And y'all are a huge part of that. And to where they know they can go in and get really good advice and get the experience that you two guys have. I mean, one thing about being in the archery industry for so long, I've seen a lot of crap. I've seen bows like y'all have. Man, people come to me and PSC, they'd send us bows, and this bow won't tune. I don't know what's wrong with it. It must have a bent riser or something. And you look at it, and it's like, who has been working on this thing? Yep. And it's terrible, but you don't have that problem.
Well, and I'm including you in on this because you've helped a lot of people with their stuff,
right?
And I know up here upstairs where you shoot, and I know, but the folks that do what we do, we're old.
Yeah.
There's not any younger guys. Look, I'm gonna tell you, you can go to YouTube and you can go down a rabbit hole, and there's a couple of guys that we're all friends with, but that we really respect there. Randy Ulmer.
Yeah.
I used to think, like I said, Jesus is the only one that walked on water, but this cat in archery walked on water.
Yeah.
Just about. Now you've got of course he's getting older now too, but John Dudley. He's another one I respect.
Yeah.
What he does, but that guy that wants to do that for a living anymore, they're not there.
They're not.
Hopefully they're smarter than we were. We did it because we loved it. Didn't get paid anything for it, but we did it because we wanted everybody else's boat to shoot like ours.
A lot like the reason I took that $17,000 a year
Yep.
job at Mossy Oak.
That's
It was
exactly
the love.
right.
It was the opportunity. And one thing that y'all do that have still amazes me, I don't know that we've ever talked about this, but a lot of people do bring their bows over to my house. Friends of mine that have gotten bows set up, and, well, you look at this because they don't want to drive that far. And I mean, my nephews all buy their bows from y'all, and we bought a couple of them last year from y'all. And I can look at y'all's work and instantly know it, and it's exactly the same. Now, I can't tell who did what because y'all's work is the same.
Some of he's
just a little
left-handed, I'm
minor.
right-handed.
You
It's
can look at
minor.
You can look at the D loop and see the top
D-loop
on the
and the
top
peep
side which knot it's on, and then you can tell which one.
It's
And the peep sight.
And the peep
Yeah.
sight. Just
Yeah.
the way we tie. He
the way
starts
you
from one
tie
end,
can
I start from the other.
but the work is so good, and it's
was nice of you to say.
it's the truth. I mean, man, I've seen some bad stuff come through here, and if somebody calls me with a problem, there's not very many places I'll send them, but y'all is one of the numbers that I'll always give out because, and not only that, people don't realize, especially, you can cut a lot of corners in archery, and most people do, and y'all don't. Y'all, as much as you can, y'all spend a lot of time with your customers, and you take time to set them up and get them right, and there's always a cutoff point that you have to make, because, it's like me. Somebody can come over here to get a D-loop tied on, and I can spend 3 hours on their form with them, if they really want to go down that rabbit hole, and you can't afford to do that with every customer. But y'all, I guarantee you, if somebody walks out of y'all's store, they've got a good experience and they've got equipment that'll work, and it's done
And
really
we hope
well.
so. We hope so.
I remember the very first time that I got a call. I mean, like I told you before they got here, and Richard, don't be blushing on me now, so be good. But I don't even remember how old I was when I got that first Fred Bear from y'all at Simmons, and I was 10, 11, something like that. I remember came in and got
We
it.
were back up front. It was before the big part.
Yeah, I remember I got it as a Christmas gift. You have any idea how many rabbits and deer too?
Rats.
Rats, rabbits. We shot all kind of stuff that you probably don't. I'd probably get in trouble talking about. But I ever since then, these two cats right here were the kings. And I've told y'all that before. I was like, y'all don't know how famous y'all are in this area. Like people drive all over. Y'all don't see it, but people drive all over to get their bows worked on.
Oh,
for
no
them.
doubt. I got a friend from Cutoff, Louisiana, that comes to y'all. He used to have a camp over in Columbia. We sold it for him, but he still comes up here because y'all are the only people that he'll let work on his stuff, and that's a big testament, and it's kind of sad in a lot of ways though, because there's not many people between here and there that can do good work, and unfortunately, you're right. Young guys aren't coming into it, and they're not getting mentored to do it and taught the right way to do it, and there are a couple of good schools you can go to out there that guys that can do good training on how to tune bows. But, man, there's a lot of bad information out there, too. Bad information.
It's full of bad information.
And the internet is the last place I recommend people to go to learn archery.
Well, there's more than one way to skin a cat when you do it, but boy, there's some wrong ways to skin.
There's some wrong ways to do it.
And we test a lot of those ways too. That's one thing that I do like about y'all is you said a while ago y'all are getting old. Michael said speak for yourself.
I'm getting old too, man.
Yeah. But
I'm getting there.
That's one thing. How much stuff do I come to y'all and say, hey, I saw this on YouTube, or saw this, somebody said this, or remember the vane, the tracking left and tracking right, depending on the helical, talking about that. We debunk stuff all the time down there.
We had someone come in and bear shaft tuning, having an arrow come off your string, turns to the left or turns to the right. It's all dependent on the twist of the string. We had, bless his heart, had a guy says, look, I saw a video of a well-known hunting guy on TV. Shoot, followed it with his camera, and it started twisting one way, and all of a sudden it stopped and then twisted the other way. I said, nope, can't happen. I said, Look, I went to Farmville High School. I'm from Union Parish, but I'm telling you right now, that did not happen.
Right.
So, Nolan, I said, "No, you got your camera out there in your car?" I do. I said, "Bring it in and let's."
Slow motion here.
We're gonna slow motion this thing. You know, once that thing goes in one direction,
It's gonna
and the fletchings are guided.
Right.
There's no turning back.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But and thank goodness,
we
John
tried-
Dudley, he debunked all that with one video that he had.
We tried to figure out why one time, and I put all of our engineers on it. And it's a combination of the string twist and the serving twist. But we would have two bows set up identically, and one of them would want to come off a little bit to the, and it's such a fraction amount. It's not going to overcome the helical on the fletching. It's just not that dominant. But we never could come to a consensus of why one would do it one way and the other one. And literally, I had those guys doing charts and trying all these different bows and
that was way back when. I mean, that was before this ever really got on the internet that y'all did that.
Oh, yeah.
Are you talking about with bear shaft? Are you talking about the way it clocks?
Yeah, the way it
clocks.
clocks one way or the other.
Yeah.
And we really couldn't figure it out. And I think it came down to a combination of the twist on the string and the serving and the way that you had the serving put on the string it's probably got a little high spine in there too that could help. You never know. But it doesn't. It's way too much to think about.
Look, you got way more stuff to worry about what's going on than how that air is coming off.
The main thing I tell people, learn to shoot first.
Yeah, that's right.
and it's like oh crap! Who's the guy that back in your day that won all the world championships and him and his wife Ragsdale?
Oh my word! Way back in the day.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
This guy
Terry
was
Ragsdale.
the first one to ever shoot a 300 round in Vegas and everything. And I remember he shot a perfect round, I think, in Vegas. And he came back, and this is way back, and paper tuning was just catching on. And he's like, I got to go home and try that. So he took the bow that he had shot a 900 in Vegas with, and he said it had about a 5-inch tear. and yeah, it didn't tear. It didn't shoot at all.
Well, back then, your cables were steel.
Yeah.
And you didn't have a whole lot of room for that, for the timing
Right.
on your cams. We didn't know back in those days.
Yeah, they were learning as we went. They were good days.
It was crude, but boy, that was fun too back in the
Everybody
day.
shot a 30-inch draw length too.
Everybody shot a 30 inch.
and at one time it was funny. I remember I was looking at old PSE catalogs. I think I've still got them here, which was well before my day. One time they had 12 pages of overdraws, nothing but overdraws for everybody's bows. They had, if you wanted to know, and I'm like, we haven't seen overdraws, Tim Gillingham's still trying to bring them back, but it's never going to happen. But
let's hope they don't.
Yeah, but it is it's interesting.
But you've seen it. I mean, it's come a long way from when you started way back at Mossy Oak to.
Yeah, and I recommend people get good instruction. And unfortunately, I don't care what sport you want to play. I don't care if it's golf, tennis, football, baseball. For some reason, archery is the only one that people think they're going to get really good at without getting good instruction and good coaching. There's a reason why the best shooters in the world do it pretty much the same. And I'll tell this, when my daughter started shooting, who did really well shooting, she didn't come to me till she was 15. And when she started shooting, I was like, she told me she wanted to shoot in an archery tournament. I said, okay, I'll tell you what, if you'll let me train you, in 3 weeks there's a tournament coming up, I'll take you to it. But you got to work with me an hour every night, and we'll shoot inside here. And I put her, not only did I coach her, but I put her with I sent her videos of some of the best coaches in the world. And what she didn't know was the archery contest tournament we were going to was Vegas. And
wow,
she finished like top 20 out of 300 and something shooting after only 3 weeks. And she ended up winning 6 state championships, 3 indoor, 3 outdoor. She dominated. And it was all because I taught her the right way
to begin with.
To begin with, she never shot a trigger release. She learned on a hinge. I taught her with a hinge from the beginning, so she didn't know how to punch trigger. She had never had to overcome that. And it's kind of like my golf game. Once you've got bad habits, it's almost impossible to get rid of them. So learn, and get good instruction. And
well, you threw her out of the frying pan, slap into the fire. Didn't
oh
you?
Man, it was fun. She had, but it was kind of backfired on me. 3 weeks later was her second tournament, and we went to the Louisiana State tournament, which was over in Shreveport, and it was not a good experience for her because she went from shooting in this big tournament. That was her freshman year, and she was up by 20 points after day one. And she told me she didn't want to come back because it was an overcrowded range, and she was shooting with 50 and 60-year-old men, nuts to butt, on the line. Some guy bit her head off because she bumped him with her arrows in her quiver, and she got upset. And I was like, okay, if you don't want to come back, we're not coming back. And because she had only experienced the good side of it, the Vegas side of it. But then we started traveling, and, man, it was such a blessing. I got to travel all over, and we shot Paris, Texas. We shot ASAs. We shot everywhere, and it was and she developed a lot of friends that were just archery tournament friends. So when she was here, she had her cheering and everything that she did, but that was something that was really cool that she got to do with Dad that was totally different. And then she had some offers to shoot in college if she would have wanted to. She didn't, and she came to me and just said, I just want to shoot. Mississippi College recruited her, but I've always told people, if you'll let me start you and get you going in the right direction, it makes all the difference in the world, and you can do really good things. But it'll help you. 3D game, I mean, the archery game, the tournament game is a great game. It really is, and I wish we had even stronger. We used to be bigger around here.
It did.
My first tournament experience was with you back in the Toledo. Was it Toledo Tackle days?
Could have been.
Yeah. I remember I bought my first real bow.
Sportsman's Corner days.
Yeah, Sportsman Corner. It was a York Tracer. I'll never forget that bow, a York Tracer. And it was a speed demon at the time. And I remember going in there and shooting, and I would shoot. My mom would just drop me off. If she was going past, she'd just drop me off, and that was my entertainment. And I'd be like, and I remember mowing yards to buy a Scott release, because that was the deal. And I remember in there one time, and I didn't think I was good enough to shoot with y'all, and you kept encouraging me, man, it's league night, let's stay and shoot with us. And finally I did, and I didn't win, but I shot with everybody and realized it was a lot of fun, and that kind of started the whole thing for me.
But back then, if you didn't know if archery had a peak.
Right.
And it seemed like, and that's the late 80s back then, and we said, man, how much further can it go? I was telling them a story one time. A guy said, man, this new bow, it was a Pearson spoiler, and that's about the time. So they said, man, those old timers, I don't know that it's going to be tough to shoot. It's too short. It's so short. It was 41 inches long. Huh.
Yeah.
Now you hardly see a target bow over 41 inches long, much less.
I can't believe it was that long, because I remember when that came out, I thought it was so stubby it was impossible to shoot.
Yeah. 41 inches long.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But the young kids now, that's something about archery that I fell in love with. It doesn't matter how fast you run, how much weight you can lift, or none of that. Everybody starts. If never shot, everybody starts exactly the same.
That's exactly right.
And then after that is what you put into it.
It really is.
And then, but anyway, I love it. And now this 4-H thing has, shooting sports has kind of taken off. So now we do get to see an influx of younger archers.
Right.
I just, something that, where we are now, sometimes it's tough to do boss stuff because we still work for a living. We still work on bows every day. And if we could find someone that, man, hey, look, I'm here.
Yeah.
I want to learn, and And if you know, we're always trying to find that guy or girl.
Yeah.
And it's tough.
Yeah, it's tough to get people. And I tell you, archery took a big hit around here during COVID. You know, we had some really good 3D leagues then. You could shoot every weekend. All of them had kind of joined together, and a lot of them just since COVID, it just hadn't come back. And
we kind of shot ourselves in the foot a little bit with that. You know, we thought we were doing good, and we had an association.
Right.
Great, because it supported a lot. Well, didn't think about it. So all the clubs need to have members.
Right.
You had to have members to join. And then when you have members to join, you have a little bit of money. You can pay your lease. You can buy new targets.
Right.
That kind of thing. You had people that would, it's like anything else. You know, you have less than 10% do 100% of the work.
Right.
And that's what you wound up with.
You had
and with this association, the clubs were getting very little. The association was getting something, and they put it back out there, but you start losing membership.
Yeah.
And then I think that had
and like you say, I mean, I remember those guys, and you know them. There's only a handful of them that would do all the work at those things, and unfortunately.
But in our day when we started, you know, at Tupal out there on Highway 80.
Oh yeah.
There would be so many people that would show up, and sometimes you'd shoot on Saturdays, sometimes you shoot on Sunday afternoons after church. But Highway 80 would, you know, you'd park inside,
right?
But then the overflow parking was on Highway 80, and you had to tell people, "No, we got it. We have enough people to help."
Yeah.
And you would have so many people want to help. Now, I mean, man. Would you help me go pick up these targets? How many, with 20 target shooting range, and there's 2 of you.
Yeah.
It'd wear you slap out.
Yeah, it really would.
And it just wore people. It just wore people out. But I'm telling you, if we had some property dedicated just for that, I think it would go again now because we got an influx of younger shooters, and we see them every day. There's we have a lot of guys our age, maybe a little younger than us, some older than us, that would.
Yeah,
they would kind of get into this archery, the target aspect,
no doubt.
Whether they did it to get better at their hunting or for target. Period.
It's both fun. It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun.
Well, and that's the biggest thing is, for me anyways, up until probably, I don't know what it felt like yesterday, but up until probably just a few years ago, it don't matter how good I could shoot. I'm not saying I was good, but how good I could shoot 60, 70 yards. That deer walked out, son, I couldn't hardly draw my bow back. And it's all the going back to like the fundamentals, all the stuff that I learned wrong, and then going back and them teaching me, here's how you actually go and do it. And them doing their best with me anyways. It got it where I can.
And experience, man.
Yeah.
I tell people, you got to miss a few before you figure it out.
Or a lot.
A lot, yeah. And what I always like to tell myself is, no matter how long I've waited to get that opportunity, I'll weigh that against, once I let that arrow go, I can't get it back.
No turning back.
So you better make it count, because you've spent hundreds of hours to get to that point. Don't lose it now. And one thing the question, I think everybody should have a scenario in their head right before they release an arrow. And for some people, it's pick a spot or do this. For me, it's, are you sure? And that, to me, says, are you sure that's the shot you want to take? Is this, because you got everything riding on that. And at that point, my form and everything, it's dialed. It's instinct at that. Yeah, it's instinct at that point. But and I'm asking myself, are you sure that's where you want to hit this deer? And it kind of brings all that into perspective. And the other thing is, just know that deer's a long way from dead when I let the arrow go. He's a long way. I can screw it up. You know, a lot of when you first start bow hunting, you see a deer and you think, oh, this is it. It's the opportunity of a lifetime. Yeah. He's a long way, a long way. And I tell people, I don't even get excited till after the shot now, because I'm waiting for him to turn and chase a doe off and not go the right way, or something bad to go. I'm literally thinking through all the scenarios, that most of which I've had happen to me in my life, that could go wrong. So I'm not I'm not freaking out because in my mind it ain't happened yet. Yeah. and that's kind of another thing I use to keep myself under control is that even if I release the arrow and I hit him high, then it ain't happened yet. If I make a bad shot, if I hit a limb or for whatever it is. So my deal is use all my energy on eliminating that stuff, and then are you sure? And then when I let that arrow go, then it hits me like a ton of bricks. Like Stan Potts, I got to sit down.
You need to get a Sharpie and write that on your riser. Are you sure?
Look, I'm telling you, he's the killer out of the two of us, and I've missed 3 big ones in a row.
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring this up.
I get so nervous when they walk up, and really I probably need to go to the doctor and check my carotid arteries, but it felt like they were about to poke out my skin, and I can hear myself breathe. I had to shut my mouth. Anyway, finally, 20 minutes it takes me to calm down, and finally I calm down, and I think sometimes I black out. I think I got a safety harness on, I black out, and I said, and I miss, and I said, well, I don't even know where my pin was when I pulled the trigger. I can't remember where it was at.
Yeah.
So it's do as I say. I can tell you how to shoot, and I can show you some things. But do as I say, not as I do. I can't tell you how to kill a deer.
It's the hardest thing in the world to maintain composure at that point. Oh, yeah. And the people that are the best killers are the ones that can do it. Like I say, Mark Drury can do it. He's going to hold it together. Terry, not so much. And I'll say this if they're sitting here, Terry will mess it up.
Now, he's a little older, too.
Yeah, he's older. Yeah, Terry is not he's a super guy, one of my favorite people in the world. But yeah, he'll mess one up in a heartbeat.
You know, that's fun though, dude.
Oh yeah, He
well, those people that don't do so well with that, y'all have to have somebody to make fun of. So
that's right.
I'm here for your entertainment.
We'll get that new.
I've done it myself.
I've missed my fair share.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. People tell me, a lot of turkey hunters say, "Well, I've never missed a turkey." I'm like, then you ain't shot it very many.
I've never killed one. I've missed every one on my shot at.
Yeah. You ain't shot at many of them if you say you ain't missed one yet, because it's gonna happen.
What's the story? There's two kind of people. Either they haven't hunted enough, or they're lying.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Usually it's both.
We'll
get that new bottomland Hoyt, and we'll get that Sharpie, and I'll write on it for you. Are you sure?
Are you sure?
You go.
That's right.
We're gonna do it with a Sharpie too. We ain't no excuses. But speaking of bows, I mean we're pushing an hour and a half.
Oh,
and
good grief.
We're talking about how long would y'all normally run? I'm like, dude, it just depends how the conversation. Yeah, about 45 minutes to an hour. Every one we do is an hour and a half. Probably.
So I told you. I said, look, all you got to do is ask Shelby one question, and just sit back and
listen. This is
and
the
look,
first.
We haven't even touched on that much. I mean, we may have to do another one.
We'll be back here tomorrow. We're just gonna leave everything set up.
I need to get one kind of fishing / hunting story.
Yeah,
maybe hanging on the wall over there behind him.
Oh yeah, we haven't talked about the gar.
I don't know if the cameras can see that or not.
They can. We'll give y'all a little bit of a preview. Let's save that for the next one.
Okay.
What y'all think?
You can't do that.
No, we got to.
No. We don't say with the fish on the wall. Look, I'm looking at an alligator gar. It's not 14 foot long. I'd be exaggerating, but Shelby, how long is that fish?
It's 8'6".
8'6" alligator. And weighed how much? At the time that you weighed it?
At the time I weighed it, was 210, which beat the old state record by 78 pounds. And it's the longest one ever killed with a bow and arrow. Now I didn't weigh it for over 24 hours, so it was killed right here in Desir.
And we're doing this podcast at Blake's house in Monroe, Louisiana. I'm sorry, Sterlington.
Yeah, Sterlington.
And this fish is the most prehistoric looking thing. Look. First of all, he's got a bunch of great heads, and most of these I remember. We were younger back in those days, and he was working for some of the companies we talked about it, and great stories. But when you walk up here, this one fish.
It's funny. I do a lot of speaking around in different churches and things, and that's all people want to talk about. It's like, I've done other stuff in my career besides shoot that alligator gar, but that's the story that always gets everybody, and it was blind luck. I mean, when that thing hit, it was all over the country. It was on Louisiana Sportsman. It was everywhere. And I had people from Monster Fish calling me and everything, and people wanting to hire me for guided trips. Can you put me on a big gar like that? I'm like, no, it was a fluke. It was I was bass fishing behind my house in a 14-foot John boat with a 40-pound thrust trolling motor on it. I didn't even have a big motor on it. And I kept a boat fishing rig in there because I would see big carp back there from time to time. And that's what started the deal. And we can save the rest of it if you want to.
I'm telling you, that's the most unbelievable thing.
It is.
You couldn't sleep in this room right here because of the nightmare you'd have. Right there.
Yeah, thing.
And it was an interesting
And how
story.
old did they
130 to 160 years old is what they
and the proof of
estimated.
that, what did they find in that scar embedded in there?
That was this one right here was they think was a musket ball. And when you looked at it from the other side, it had rings in it like a tree. It had grown and healed. But one thing about that thing, look at all the scars.
Yeah.
It's been hit with a boat motor so many times. How many times have you been riding down a lake and it's like, oh, crap, what was that?
Thought you hit a
There's
log.
not supposed to be
right.
one there. And, well, that was her. And it was, man, it was a 2.5 hour ordeal. It was very physical. And, yeah, it was a wild ride. And it was, like I say, 100% luck. I didn't have any idea it was there. I wish I could have
sure
said.
he was 100% lucky.
Yeah.
He thought he was shooting an illegal alligator.
Yeah,
But he
yeah.
didn't. He just so happened to be a world
I'll
record
tell the
fish.
story before the game warden calls. So,
That's right.
I'm out there and I'm fishing a frog, and I look and I see a fin waving underneath the grass mat, and I thought it was a big grass carp. So I pick up my boat real quick, and all I used was a trolling motor, so I kind of glide into it, and I draw and shoot, and man, everything breaks loose when it explodes out of there. And I instantly had a wide wobbling swim, and I'm holding it, and it goes under the boat, and now I've got it kind of going, the line's going around the trolling motor, and I'm just holding it with my hands, and it's cutting me to the bone. And that braid line was, and I'm holding it, and I'm thinking, I shot an alligator. I'm an idiot. And so I grab my pocket knife, and I'm like, I'm going to cut it. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're the only redneck that lives in this neighborhood. And you're the bow hunter. If a dead alligator shows up with an arrow in it, they're coming to your house.
They know it's you.
Yeah. And so I'm like, well, I'll just hold on to it, and maybe it'll pull the arrow out. But in that lightweight boat, it just kept pulling me. And I'm bouncing off of cypress trees and blah, blah, blah. And finally, after about 30 minutes, I look up there, and it's just a big arch. Her air bladders were full, and she was just arching, floating up there. And so now I realize what it is, and I wanted it real bad. And so I tied it off to the little loop on the John bow. It's not even a cleat. And then I cut the line. I had one more arrow, and I tied it on, and I eased up to her again, and I shot her again. And I had 2 perfect lung shots on her. And, man, here she goes again. And it's a long, and I'm fighting. And at one time, she gets the line caught on a stump, and she's pulling this way, and I'm pulling this way with my old trolling motor, and it brings us together because the line's going like this. And I kept this little pink T-ball bat in my boat that I would kill these carp with, because, and I take that thing, and I'm like, I'm going to hit her with everything I have. And I'm like, bam, and it was like hitting concrete. Stung. And when I did, she rolls and catches the side of the boat and almost flips the whole boat. And I'm like, okay, don't do that again. Yeah. And it didn't phase her. Their head is so, it's 2 inches thick on top. And so I get a hold of my buddy, Kenneth Halley, and I've got some great pictures that he's like, what I need to do? I was like, put your boat in, come down here, bring a gun and a rope. Because I was thinking you can't really kill a gar. I've shot them with arrows and then 3 hours later kicked them out of the boat and had them swim off. They'll live. And so now I've kind of got it under control, and I'm floating it just I can barely see color, but I don't want to get on the bottom and getting in stumps. So, and all of a sudden it released its air bladders and it started boiling up like a well. And I knew it and it got real heavy, and I knew it had died. So luckily when Kenneth came, he did not bring a gun. He brought his 15-year-old daughter, Lauren. And I'm like, this ain't a place for her, because this is going to be a rodeo getting this thing in the boat. And we did finally get it over in the boat, and I didn't have any trolling motor juice left. I actually called Wildlife and Fisheries from the water, and they met me at my house. And the next day, they wanted me to keep it overnight so that their gar expert could drive up from Baton Rouge. So I hung it in a tree in the backyard and just left it overnight.
What time of the year? I didn't ask that earlier.
It was in the spring. It says on it.
May 26, 2009.
Yeah, May 26. So it was right after the spawn.
So it was hot.
Yeah.
It wasn't 30 degrees.
Yeah, it was disgusting. And anyway, the next day, I went down to Wildlife and Fisheries, and it was funny. They had 80 people there. Every agent was there. Everybody that had heard was there. Mm-hmm. And I went and showed it to all of them. None of them could complete it. The gar expert was there. They never once asked me for my fishing license. I guess they assumed since I called them I was legal. But then I had to figure out how to weigh it, because they couldn't weigh it. So I stopped at the post office, and they're a bulk mail center, and they brought a cart out there and took it inside the post office, slammed this big fish down in there and weighed it for me and got the official weight on it.
What'd you say?
What'd you tell that girl?
Yeah, it was funny. I walked in there and I'm like, and there was a little bit of a line. I was like, ma'am, I killed a fish I think might be a record. Can y'all weigh it for me? She's like, sure, honey, bring it on in here. I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is a big fish. And so she came out to the parking lot. Then they all came out there. And it was funny. When I killed it, I'll never forget, y'all know Jonathan Gregory?
Yeah.
Big Jonathan Gregory? I called him from the water, and I was like, you got to meet me at the house. You ain't going to believe this. And he said, well, how big is it? I was like, it's a 6-footer. Because, in gar world, 6 foot's a trophy.
That's a trophy.
And my goal was always to kill a 6-footer. So, and what Jonathan wears like a 18 shoe. I mean, his foot's huge. He stepped it off, and he's like, it's more than 8 of my feet. That's big. It's way bigger than 6 foot. And I was like, okay, you better get some people down here that can check this out. So that's the story of the alligator gar. And
it's a famous story that went from, and there's a whole bunch of versions, whether you know that or not. That's the truth version.
Yeah.
Then there's a half a dozen more other versions.
And it was funny. The people from Monster Fish called me, and they're like, well, sir, could you put us on a similar gar of that? I'm like, no, it's a once-in-a-lifetime freak deal. And then she's like, well, can you tell us, did you release the fish back into nature? I'm like, no, I shot it with a bow. It's a bow kill. She was not a fan of mine by the end of that conversation.
Ma'am, we're in Louisiana. If it wouldn't hung up in a tree so long, we'd ate it.
And I had people get upset with me for shooting it. It was so old, and I'm like, look, I didn't have a master.
You didn't know it.
Yeah, I didn't know. But I will say this: I've killed another 5.5-footer and one other 6-footer, and now I don't shoot them anymore. When I go bow fishing a lot, and if I see a 4-foot, 5-foot alligator gar, I don't shoot them, because I know how long it takes them to be something special. And I've done it. I'm like, okay, if I'm not going to mount it and I'm not going to kill one bigger than the one I have, I'll save it for somebody else. And as a matter of fact, we were down there hunting in South Louisiana this year, and we let about a 5.5-footer get away because I saw it. It was on my side of the boat, and I was like, somebody come shoot this thing. And they shot at it. they were not very good shots. But
I'm gonna tell you, that's an impressive
Yeah.
specimen.
Out of all the things in here, caribou, the elk, the bear, everything, that's you don't see that.
It's funny. Like I said, I'll go speak at I remember speaking at Swartz Church one time, and I mentioned the gar, and then I went on and did my little presentation. Then I told them some stories about hunting with Dale Earnhardt or Wade Boggs or all these people that I've gotten to hunt with, and they're like, no, let's get back to the gar. Every time I try to get them away from it.
Look, and later on during this podcast, at the end, we'll have Blake's address at the bottom of the page.
People come knocking.
Yeah, exactly.
Sell tickets at the front door.
That's right.
Yeah. Sweet Bailey, she'll be ready to welcome everybody.
No doubt. Well, I had a guy offer me $10,000 for the mount.
Wow.
And he's a well-known guy in the area, and he wanted to put it in his lodge. And I was going to sell that sucker. I ain't going to lie to you. But my wife wouldn't sell it.
$10,000 wouldn't have lasted very. I mean, how far would that have gone?
I know it. And I actually, I've donated it to the Natural History Museum so that when I die or whatever, that's where it's going to go. So
that's awesome. Okay. That's awesome.
And they had contacted me right after I killed it, and so yeah, it's a interesting deal. And the guy Bass Shop mounted it for me.
Yeah.
So did a great job. So
yeah, and we did a podcast with him, Mr. Dave.
Oh really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a good dude, and he's done a lot of the work in here.
He didn't bring that up. Out of all the stuff that he brought up, he talked about a rattlesnake that had a head of a. I don't remember. Do y'all remember? Was it a head of a squirrel or something like that? I don't remember. He was talking about some weird thing, but he didn't talk about that.
Well, he's actually mounted three of the 4 biggest alligator gar ever killed, because David Hansen has killed. He had the world record for a while, and then he beat his own world record, and he mounted both of those fish.
Oh, wow.
Did you say this was the longest, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, this one's longer than any of them.
Yeah, this is the longest.
Yeah, and it
That's
probably
crazy.
would have been weight-wise. I know if I would have killed it before the spawn, it would have smoked everything. But then also, after letting it hang that long, it lost a lot.
Yeah.
of weight.
Oh, yeah.
Look, it don't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Look, dude, that's just part of the stories that you've got.
right.
I mean, just pile it on. There's
That's
another
right.
story.
It's
like you needed another one.
Yeah, it's been fun.
We appreciate you inviting us into your home
Yeah.
and letting
Hey,
us.
man,
But look, we've been
anytime.
wanting to do this since we started this series, and Nolan, he's taken his podcast thing to a way different level than, and we're just guests on it too. We don't.
Well, you know, you guys we've been friends a long time. We've hunted together. Michael and I took him to my place in Arkansas, and I don't take hardly anybody there. So I don't know. He must have dirt on me or something. But
I don't know.
And then
Michael, share that dirt with me.
Richard and I have been to.
That dude don't have.
Where
any
did we
dirt.
go? Kansas or I was trying to. Or
We
Illinois.
went to Kansas. And I'll tell you real quick. We left at 8:00 one night. So I asked, we're pulling out of his driveway. I asked him a question. We're on the other side of Little Rock. And I had to slow. I said, all right, Blake, hang on. Now, are we going to spend the night?
Yep.
He said, where are we? I said, we just went through Little Rock. He said, well, let's drive to Fort Smith. Not Fort Smith, but Fayetteville. Maybe we'll spend the night in Fayetteville. So I asked him another question, and that lasted from Little Rock to Fayetteville.
That's right.
Did we go we drove straight through, didn't we?
No, we spent the night, and then we hunted with 2 other people that I'm so glad that I got to meet because of you. But the
Kiefer brothers.
The Kiefer brothers. That's
Yeah,
right. The Kiefer
absolutely.
brothers were on that trip.
Absolutely. You talk about a class act now.
Man, they're super good guys. And now, was that the time when he killed Megatron?
Oh, and that's 2 more boys that you got.
Oh, yeah. That we got
with
to
the
shooting
PSC.
PSC.
That's
yeah,
right.
And they're good guys. But was
I
that the trip he killed Megatron? That big?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't.
I was with
it
him
might
when-
have been that year, but
Yeah, I was with him when he killed Megatron. That was a fun hunt. That's another story.
Was that
for
like
another
200
time,
and something inch deer? Like 217 or?
Oh, yeah, that deer. That's probably the biggest whitetail I've ever laid my eyes on. Most impressive one.
Oh, wow.
And I actually could have killed it. I saw the deer. They'd been hunting it all year, and I was hunting, and it was a cut cornfield and then CRP, and it had a little row of trees in between it. And I saw the deer go into the CRP and bed down. And I was like, all we have to do is go in that row of trees, and we can put a stand up right there, which was about 150 yards from where I was hunting. And he's going to come back out this evening. And we did. We slipped in there, and we're going to do a hang and bang. And they're like, well, hunt him. I'm like, I ain't hunting. Y'all been chasing this deer. It's just y'all's deer. And so we put Casey in there, and he killed him. And that evening, he said he could see him when he stood up. And he had let us go in there, and we were real stealthy when we went in there. Of course, up there, you don't have to hang stands 20 feet like you do around here, 25 feet. We stuck one up, but we had a cameraman and did it, and it worked out. So I got to play a small part of that one.
The time I went with you, we hadn't been in Kansas 20 minutes, and I get a text. I just shot one. I said, no way. I'm just now putting my backpack on my tree. I just shot at one. And I don't know if we
coming from Blake.
Yeah.
Did you kill him?
I don't remember.
I don't remember. I don't think so. I don't think we ever found him.
I don't remember that deer.
That's what I said. All right, we're in Kansas. So here we go.
Yeah.
But we had a good. That was one of my most memorable hunts too. I enjoyed
was fun.
the ride up there and the ride back. It didn't seem like it took but a hot minute to get
Well,
back.
I enjoyed this. This is the first podcast I've ever sat here. And y'all know, look, I know you don't know me that well, but you know me well enough. I don't shut up. I like to talk. And this is the first one. Michael's over nodding his head. This is the first one I've ever sat in that I didn't say a whole lot, and I've enjoyed it. This is
Well, and I apologize.
No,
he and I have so much history.
I've enjoyed it. Man, this has been fun. I knew I was going to enjoy it, but this has been good.
We'll have to do it again. I mean, we hadn't even touched on turkey hunting or
you talking about fishing and stuff? Yeah. You brought up live scope earlier. We got the Garmin guru that he does a lot of stuff with us.
Oh, I need to meet him.
Oh, and listen, and bless his heart, he we ruffled the feathers of
Hank
Parker. So that'd be something good for y'all to.
Yeah.
But I think now they have made up, and maybe one or both were kind of misunderstood each other. I think.
And that's really all it was. It was. Misinterpreted.
But I tell you, he was so gracious
deal.
with that deal.
But
Hank Parker,
that's what we got to do.
It impressed me. But
we're getting Hank on, and I think it's going to be sometime this fall. So we need to set that up. That maybe me, you, Trandy, Garmin Guru, and Hank. We can.
That
get
would
together.
be
I'd love
to
do one with Hank.
Yeah, let's.
we go way back.
Yeah, let's.
Then you can find some of
that
that dirt you're looking for.
I got to get up there to Kansas with you.
Yeah.
But no, we brought our bows. You didn't bring yours?
No, I just found out about it this morning. I was on vacation last week.
Oh, yeah. He was out there catching fish at Caney and Bussy and smoking.
Yeah. He caught
smoking.
He
caught it 7 1/4.
7 1/4 pound.
But got it on video on that 360 too, didn't you?
That's awesome.
But we got bows, and we were going to shoot and all that stuff, and we got up here and started talking about all these other gar stories and the caribou and everything else.
And it's hot out there.
It's smoking hot. It feels good up here now, being 70-something degrees. It's better, but we have a lot of stuff that we want to do, so we'll definitely do this again.
Absolutely. Just give me a call.
Get our bows and maybe set up a 3D deal and go out there and shoot, and why we'd shoot one at this angle or not shoot one, or just talk about stuff. I think that'd be awesome if we did something like that. I enjoy that.
It'd be
Absolutely.
Fun. This was
Y'all
fun.
just call me. I'm always game.
Good. We know that. That's awesome. We appreciate you taking your time. And I know your wife. I think I heard her come in a little. Mm-hmm. You did tell her we were coming, right?
Yeah, I did.
You said we were going to fill up her driveway?
Yeah. But she probably left thinking we'd be done by now, but
she's parked out there on the road with their hazards on.
We got to talking, but that's all right. It turned out good, and I appreciate everybody. Good to see you back.
Yeah,
finally. we finna get busy, so we're gonna have to.
Well, you're leaving now.
Well, I'm leaving now, but next week we'll get after it.
Well, I stop in there to see y'all every time I'm through the area, and it's always one of my favorite places. Y'all do a heck of a job over there.
We appreciate
your whole staff. Y'all have got one of the best staffs out there.
They do.
Man, I tell you, we looked up there. I mean, that you talk about some nice folks.
Yeah.
And look, and when the church doors are open, they're in there.
Yeah.
I mean, we got good people.
And not just nice, but knowledgeable.
Yes.
You don't talk about guys when it comes to guns. I mean, y'all got the archery locked down, but you don't talk about guns and suppressors. Them cats down there, you're not going to find anybody that knows more about guns and suppressors. There's not a gun or part or serial number in there that those cats don't know about. You have to peek your head in that closet before you leave.
Look, I'm telling you, they've taught me some. I don't know anything about a gun too much, but this suppressor is it's the popular thing, and now they're a lot easier to get now than what they were in the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those boys can spat that information out,
and it's so much better for your ears.
Oh yeah.
I just got hearing aids for the first time. I don't wear them very much, but I've got them during turkey season. It was a game changer, though.
Yeah.
It helped
Could
me
you
a
course?
lot.
Could you course?
I could course pretty good. Not as good as I could without them, but luckily, I usually hunt with one of my nephews. I very rarely just go on my own, and I would. But it was funny because I would hear turkeys they didn't even hear, and then I'd be like, "Where is he?" And they're like, "We didn't hear that." And I'm like, "Well, listen," and they'd gobble again, and then I always had help tracking. It's not quite as good, but you can track with them on. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, just not knowing. But I did have some turkeys I thought were coming up this way, and then they come in from a different angle, and I hadn't messed. They can always surprise you, but I just didn't have as good a track on them as I thought. But it sure beats not hearing them.
Well, I'm getting that way, and we were turkey hunting, me and my boys, and we struck one about 11:30, and I said, "Get down!" So everybody got to a tree, and I noticed. They're pointing their guns this way. Well, the turkey is coming from this direction.
Right.
I said, "What are y'all doing?" He said, "Get ready." I said, "I am ready." And he gobbled again. I said, "Dude, so I get my gun." And, of course, they're in front of me a little bit. All I was there was just to watch.
Yeah.
But I said, I said, "Guys, y'all hurry up and turn around." And, of course, Jacob says, "Daddy, we're looking at it." I said, "Where is he?" He says, "Right in the middle of the food plot." I looked over it. I said, "Holy cow!"
Yeah.
So I can hear it, but I can't course it. So
I've abused my ears with guns for a long time, and it's I didn't want to get hearing aids because I didn't think I was old enough to get them, but finally I said, "Look, I got to," and these silencers and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because I always was pretty good about wearing hearing protection when I was at the range or whatever, but I shoot a lot when I'm not at the range. I shoot a lot at hogs that I walk up on, or, I'm calling ducks or whatever it is, and you do a lot of damage, and it doesn't come back. So, anyway, that's another thing we can talk about sometime.
Well, all right, Mr. Nolan, close
Tell
us
them,
out.
in case somebody's listening, we got people from all over listening to this thing. And someone's wanting to buy some land. What areas do you service, and how can they get in contact with you?
I can help you out just about anywhere, but northeast Louisiana, southeast Arkansas. I really specialize in Union Parish all the way through southern Arkansas. Anywhere in there is my territory, and I would love to help somebody. I didn't do this to get a plug, but I appreciate it. It's we've got some great properties, and even if you need another agent somewhere else, give me a call and I'll hook you up with we got good guys in every area. Clint Wood and those guys are here locally and work over more in y'all's area now. And
they were in the store not too long ago.
Yeah, and they're very, very, very good agents. And
good people.
Yeah, really good people.
You got is it a work number, cell number, anything like that?
Yeah, you can 318-366-5913. So 318-366-5913. You can get me anytime. So if you don't get me, I'm in the middle of the woods somewhere, text me and I'll call you back.
How awesome is that, man? I got to go to work. Where are you going? I'm going to this 300-acre track over here and kind of ride around.
I'm going to go check it out for turkeys.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thank you again for coming on.
Hey, thank y'all. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing all of it with us.
Yeah, we'll do it again. Like I said, we'll shoot our bows, and there's a lot more stories I want to hear from y'all.
Yeah,
we really do. Dudley, that's one of the ones it's not locked down. We haven't said anything because, again, it's not for sure. He's got the Total Archer Challenge. It's all that stuff going on, but that's something him and Richard, they've been talking, and we're trying to find a window that we can slip up there and do that.
We're going to Iowa. We're not going to do the
no. We're not
Zoom deal.
Yeah, I don't want to do a Zoom call.
I told him, I said, man, I need 2 hours.
Yeah.
And he's awesome. We meet it when we go to the Broken Bow to tack. man, I'm telling. He takes more time with us and talking with us and shooting with us.
Those big archery challenges are the future of target archery.
They're legit.
They're huge.
Yeah.
And they're not shooting for a trophy.
That's right.
Nobody
no
wins
competition.
anything. Well, except for the maybe like
the novelty shoots.
Novelty shoots.
Yeah,
the
truck and stuff like that.
It's so much fun, and it's what archery used to be. And I tell, and not to get off subject, but I tell people all the time, people are so intimidated to shoot because they're embarrassed that they're not going to shoot good. And I'm like, look, I was Mr. PSE, and I can go and get my butt kicked with the best of them. I can throw up zeros and stop it. Nobody cares what you shoot but you.
Right.
Go have fun and enjoy it.
Absolutely.
And they're doing it right at those events because it's more about the fellowship and being together with other hunters, and that's what it's really all about.
Yeah, there's no riffraff going on out there.
Yeah.
Everybody out there, I mean, you don't meet a stranger. Everybody's solid.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great people. So.
We'll have our own little total archery challenge here next time. We'll get together
let's
and
do
shoot.
it.
So, all right, SpottedDogSportingGoods.com. We post all the good stuff on Facebook and Instagram. And but if you go shopping, it's $99 or more. Qualifies for what, Richard?
Free shipping.
Free
and
shipping.
Also, it's a revamped website.
Oh, yeah, no, the website's amazing.
Yes.
The website.
Yes.
I'll
It
check
wasn't
it
bad
out.
to begin with.
No, it was
because I could
it was
navigate
good.
it.
Yeah, Joseph, he's killed it. That's that website.
But
Go-
now we got it the way we want it now.
Even if you don't buy anything, go check it out. SpottedDogSportingGoods.com, located in Columbia, Louisiana.
One
Jewel
of the best.
of Caldwell Parish.
There you go.
It is one of the best.
All right. Appreciate you, friend.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank y'all for coming on.
Hey,
It's
we
always
enjoyed
fun
it.
when
I'm
you get
telling
here.
you, we enjoyed it.
Glad to have you back from that. Got that old sun-kissed tan.
Little
Ready to go.
sunfire.
Farmer's tan,
That's
bass
right.
fisherman tan.
That's right.
All right. Thank y'all so much for listening. We appreciate it.
Very
All right.
good.
Bye, y'all.
See y'all.